Welcome to For the Long Run, the podcast exploring the why behind what keeps runners running long, strong, and motivated. I'm your host, Jonathan Levitt. I've been running for a few years now and have the privilege of meeting many incredible runners on my travels all across the country. This podcast is intended to share those amazing conversations.
How about those bright sides?
This week's guest is Paddy O'Leary. The episode started off with us cracking a few Sufferfest beers, one of my favorites, before our conversation at his home in San Francisco. Paddy and I met through November Project, as he was the leader of November Project San Francisco. With a background in lacrosse back in Ireland, he grew into an elite-level ultra runner while training on stairs in the city with November Project and in the hills of Marin County with SFRC. Paddy talks about getting into ultra running, as well as his experience with November Project. We talked about why he suggested ultra runners jump into short races every so often and how using racing, particularly cross-country, helps within training. In his professional life, Paddy is a scientist studying cancer. We talked a bit about that and his background in academia, as well as his relationship with his coach, Matt Lay, who's an exercise physiology lecturer and researcher. We talked a bit about his relationship with his sponsors and his thoughts on racing full-time. After the podcast, we went to his favorite Irish bar in San Francisco, which is where the intro music of this episode comes from. Enjoy.
Go. Cheers.
Cheers. All right. I am here with Paddy O'Leary in San Francisco, California. And as is true to form, we are doing this podcast over a couple of good beers.
Nice.
So thanks for joining today, Paddy.
No problem at all. Glad to be here in my own home.
Normally, people fly to Boston for this podcast, so this is a bit of a unique situation where I've actually come to the guest.
Yeah, he wouldn't expense my flights over to Boston for the quick trip,
tough.
so I could get over and see Laura Green and co.
I know she's pretty bummed that she couldn't be here for this podcast, and I'm sure she's listening.
Yeah.
At the moment
Intently.
She's live.
Yeah, and Connor and Jack.
Yeah. So so cool. Well, again, good to chat with you here today. You are coming off of a podium in an event today, so let's first hear about that.
Yeah, so I jumped into my first Navigation X Challenge race, and so it's like basically you've set amount of time to traverse across whatever terrain you're doing it on. You have to try to get as many checkpoints as you can, but you can only use a compass and map. So we're over in the Berkeley Hills, which there's an array of amazing trails and hills over there. So I was like literally wandering around for 4 hours, wandering around cow fields and up and down hills and across like streams and through bushes and fucking a lot. Can I curse?
Yeah.
Shitload of poison oak.
Yeah. You stopped after and questioned shit. So let's let it roll.
I kind of on an inverse relationship with cursing. There's some worse ones I could use. But literally you're wandering around for 4 hours to try to get off as many checkpoints as you can get, and you get, for the more difficult checkpoints, you get more points or less points. You have to finish within 4 hours. If you run beyond that, they're going to add some extra, or they're going to take away your points. But it was a really fun experience. It was one great thing I felt about it is everyone's out there for 4 hours, so everyone's rushing back to finish at 4. Everyone finishes together.
That's awesome.
Versus like ultra races, people could be finishing for several hours. It's kind of cool that everyone has that set point, so it's kind of a really fun kind of community style event.
Definitely. So how did you? So we'll talk about your journey into ultra running, but how did you get into this type of racing and this type of running?
For a project actually I'm working on, I'm heading back to Ireland next month to tackle this route called the Wicklow Round. It's a kind of route in the Wicklow Mountains out of Dublin that there's 26 peaks throughout this range, and you have to go tag all of the peaks in one run in a certain order. Tricky thing is you're not allowed to use GPS. You have to use a compass and map. Most of it's off trail on pretty heinous terrain. I decided to go back in April, which is a pretty shitty time in terms of weather. And Ireland's pretty wet in general, but we're picking like the wettest time of the year just to make it a little bit more fun. But I'm going back to try beat the FKT on it, the fastest known time.
Nice. Which
was set last year. It had been standing in Irish duty, and Keith had it for 10 years. And then Joe Stringbean McConaughey, a fellow Boston
Northeast
fellow.
Guy.
Yeah. He came back and he took an hour off Ian's record last year. but we can't have Ireland's premium FKT in the hands of a fucking American.
I mean, Boston's a pretty Irish town.
Yeah, Irishish. Yeah.
Irishish.
Yeah.
So it's not clear. If it's not clear based on your accent, where are you from?
I am from Ireland. I'm from Wexford, straight out of Wexford, G. Ireland, down in the southeast of. I'm from Ireland, but I'm from a town called Wexford, down the southeast. I'm actually from outside the town. I'm from dairy country. So I grew up in the dairy farm when I was a young lad. I kind of relate Wexford to the Florida of Ireland. It's in the southeast. We have the highest level of sunshine in the country, and it's where everyone has holiday homes.
Cool.
So that's where I grew up in.
So when you were back in Ireland, you weren't running, you were playing lacrosse. Is that correct?
Yeah. When I moved up to college, I took up lacrosse, and that was my sport for, from like 2005 to like 2015. Even when I moved over here to San Francisco, I was a lacrosse player for the first 2 years here, and I coached a lot. I got involved we were like the first people to start playing lacrosse in Ireland, the first Irish born people to start playing back in 2005. Well, the first to start playing in maybe 100 years. It actually, remarkably, lacrosse had been brought over to Ireland back in late 1800s by the people who set up the first lacrosse club, Montreal Lacrosse Club, which they came over in like 1819. They brought like a Mohawk team, they brought the Montreal team over, and they did a lot of exhibition games. So lacrosse was actually big up until the First World War. And then after that, it was kind of, when Ireland got independence, we kind of shunned a lot of the foreign sports out of there. We got back into our own roots in terms of sport. But then, we got it back going in 2005 and helped set up the first lacrosse team in Ireland, and then got into the Irish national team and played in the Irish national team for 8-9 years. So when I was over here, actually, I moved to San Francisco in 2013, played in the World Championships in Denver in 2014, my second World Games. That was fun, actually. I played against, I'm sure we'll talk about November Project later, but I played against Nick Rodericks, who led he captained the French team in the 2014 World Championships, and I think he may be retiring in the next couple of weeks. He was leading the November Project Baltimore tribe.
Very cool. I think that's a good segue into, well, we'll get to November Project, but let's first talk about getting into running.
Yeah.
So you went lacrosse, which is running is often the punishment.
Mm-hmm.
How'd you get, what did your first run look like? Was it a 50K?
No. So I kind of got it, like, what really got me serious into running was actually November Project. I started when I moved here in 2013. Like, when I was a kid, I had jumped into a couple of cross-country races and whatnot, but never took it seriously. My dad was big into running, actually. He did cross-country as a kid, up until he was like 20, but then he got too busy with farming, so he had to give it up. But he was actually instrumental in setting up our local running scene back in the southeast of Ireland. But I was much more into team sports, Gaelic football, hurling, and then when I went into college, lacrosse. But then I moved to San Francisco and got involved in the November Project, which is like, it's kind of multi-sport, and it's fitness beyond running, but it's very running centric. And I just started hammering hills with November Project San Francisco. And
who were the leaders at the time?
Lauren McCluskey and Dan Clayton. So myself and Dan ended up wanted to team up, because we used to go to all the North Face Endurance Challenges when we had our November Project Summit. And what was it? In September 2014, me and Dan teamed up, and we were going to beat all the other co-leaders who had teams in the marathon relay. In Wisconsin, yeah. And we had the famous wrong turn. So it was so basically the marathon relay is 4x10k, where between 1 and 4 people can do any number of legs.
We'll get into the 1x4.
Yeah. So me and Dan were teaming up. I'd do leg 1 and leg 3. He'd do leg 2 and leg 4. And I belligerently hammer out at the start into a little bit of a lead, because I hadn't really a clue what I was doing whatsoever. And there was 2 other guys behind me. I think it was the LA leaders and a team from Chicago. And I completely miss a turn, which is convenient after just talking about doing a navigation race.
So this is the Wisconsin race.
Yeah.
And I can't think of where.
It's really well marked.
Yeah, I was going to say. It's basically really a lollipop.
Yeah, but I was in the zone, so I ended up following the 50k route or something like that. Ended up doing an extra on a 6-mile loop. I was wondering, why am I passing people again? Looked at my watch, I was about 4 miles in. Ends up I'd done an extra 4 miles on the 6-mile loop, and I was back. Went from first back to 90th. but I brought second and third away with me as well. So then I was like, oh God, I have a bit of catching up to do. And I ended up catching a couple of people. Passed to Dan. We were like 60th, I think. My good friend Pete Cruz was actually doing it as well, and he was running out the opposite direction on the second leg, and he's here, great job, Paddy. Yeah. And like, I'm a very happy and like a high five and happy-go-lucky person, and Pete says I had such a look of like just determination and just chasing people back in my head.
People.
Yeah. Passed it back to Dan, and he ended up getting us up to 10th at halfway. I ended up chasing up to 5th, but we couldn't get higher than that. We didn't break into the podium, but it was kind of that was the start of my running competitiveness, where I was eager to race and just loved the thrill of the chase, I think. And it was the start of me getting a reputation as being really poor at directions.
So this is why you're doing a compass.
I'm doing compass and map.
Makes sense. When was your first ultra?
First ultra was a few months after that. I did say my first like long trail race of 30k in like January 2015 here in the Bay, and had good success. Won my first 30k, and I was pumped about that. And from there, I don't know, it was kind of a mixture of peer pressure and also me wanting to find something different to lacrosse. Myself and my good friend Amy Leadham, Amy the Punisher, both decided to sign up for our first ultra. So we entered into the lottery for the TRT 55k, which is in July. But you find out New Year's Eve if you get into the lottery or not. And we're actually at a house party in this house right here. When me and Amy were looking at our emails at like 11:30, and we both found out we got in. So we both signed up for our first ultra. So I did my first marathon, I did the Oakland Road Marathon in March 2015. First ultra, July 2015. Did the Headlands 50k, which is the US Championships, like a month later, and then did my first 50 miler in December 2015, the North Face Challenge here in Marin, and then did my first 100k in May 2016, and then realized I was going way too long, way too quick, so kind of plateaued off for a couple of years after that.
Very cool. And you've done pretty well here at the North Face, California.
Yeah, that's my. I just love racing on home turf. It's such a fast race. It's ultimately a 50 mile like cross country race effectively. It's such a fast thing. But I think I'm suited more to like fast races like that, but I can just enjoy the mountains a lot more. So I keep signing up for these longer kind of more mountainous races. But I should be continuing to do like the races like Sonoma and the North Face 50. But yeah, I just love the atmosphere at that race, and just we always have a huge November Project presence and a huge local San Francisco running presence as well. And I've done that every year and kind of bumped up positions. And so I was 13th in 2015, 9th in 2016. And then I kind of ballsily called out in my Run Fire interview that, well, I'm jumping up 4 places every year, so I'll come 5th this year. When they interviewed me in 2017, I did come 5th that year. And then they called me out afterwards saying, well, you said you were going to win it next year. So. And then so I was training. I was actually in the best shape of my life coming into the 2018 one, but ends up because of the fires it was cancelled, so I escaped with not
Well, let's talk about the marathon you jumped into there.
Yeah.
How did that turn out? You went some people go couch to 5k, couch to marathon. You went trail 50 miler to road marathon. How did you and your coach do that?
Yeah, so to be honest, because I'd mentioned like the North Face 50 miler is such a fast race, I've been using fast training a lot to train for that. So I'd been doing cross country. I'd done the San Francisco cross country season. I'd been racing that the previous 3 months. Like, I'm a huge advocate for fast racing to prepare for trail races. So I was in really good shape, fast shape for 3 mile races or for a 50 mile race, but not for a 26 mile road marathon. So about a week beforehand, when we realized the race is going to be cancelled, we started thinking about, well, we want to utilize the fitness. I thought about signing up for and jumping on a flight to go to Cape Town to do the 100k there, which is
people did,
yeah, which was on the same weekend. But then I realized the whole full-time job and whatnot, they might be a bit pissed at me taking a couple extra days off. But for years I'd been really, like, I'd never really trained for a road marathon. I'd done Oakland, I'd done 2 Bostons, but they were always in the midst of mountain training. And but now, like, I recognize I had some really fast legs on me from training for TNF 50, and I wanted to utilize it. And why not jump into the most competitive road marathon in the US?
Right.
And it was perfect timing. Like I'd already been tapering for like 2 weeks because we had just got back from the North Face Athlete Summit, and I'd actually bruised my foot bouldering, jumping. Like, we were bouldering on the beach and without pads, which is very irresponsible 2 weeks before the North Face 50. Sorry, coach. And so I'd actually took like a 2-week taper into that. And then my leg was getting better coming up to the North Face 50. That was cancelled. But we were still in the midst of the smoke. So I jumped in, when we decided to do the marathon, I jumped in and did like one marathon pace training session on the treadmill. It was one of the scariest experiences
I remember
of my life.
You did that on what? Was that Friday?
Yeah.
Of North Face weekend?
Yeah.
I remember seeing you on Thursday and you were like, this is, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah. Like running 5:50, because I was aiming for 5:15 pace. Running 5:15 on a treadmill scared the fuck out of me.
You can like burn out the motors on those things.
I know. But jumped into that, did like a 3x3 mile workout on that, felt good, and then did another workout or two leading up to it, and then, but effectively I had like a month-long taper going into it, which was great because I love resting. So it worked out real well, and then jumped into CIM and took a reasonably reserved start into the race, but then I ended up running beside this dude from New York, from like mile 6 to mile 12, and we were clicking along some good miles, and we were through the half in like 1:10:20, I think, which is like 30 seconds slower where I needed to be because I was brazenly deciding I wanted to aim for a marathon Olympic trial pace, just because I'd
American or
with the Olympic B standard.
Right.
So we don't have a specific trial qualifier, because it's just whoever runs the fastest times gets on the team. But I had nothing to lose. Like, I was a mountain runner who was training for a mountain race, and so like I was going to go out and risk, like, go out hard, and sure, if I blew the fuck up, hey, at least we had good fun.
Yeah, you're close to home.
Yeah. But we got through halfway, and we both felt good, so we started clocking off, getting like knocking off faster miles, and dropping some 5:10s and some 5:12s, and we got to like mile 20 and we were underneath on the big trial pace. But then my legs proceeded to fall off a little bit, and he proceeded to go on and get like a 2-minute negative split.
Wow.
To get to 18:30. But I say, like, this one thing I always feel really shit about, and that I say that, oh, my legs fell off, but they didn't really. I was still running like 5:35s, which is faster than my PR. And it's something that always cracks me up when I don't know, when elite someone, I'd say like, oh, your legs fell off, but still you're moving at a hell of an amazing pace. So it's always kind of good to put that in perspective.
Definitely. So let's talk about the cross country racing. That's something that you and Dylan Bowman does a lot of it too, right?
Yeah, he was doing a lot of it last season.
Let's talk about that as someone that's training for super long stuff.
Yeah.
Just getting that hurt locker, and
it's just a whole different type of pain and suffering, but it's like it kind of helps you train mentally to really dig in a hole, but it's only
from the gun,
but it's only from immediately. So it's good for like tackling your nerves going into a race as well, because you got to go quick. But you've got like 20 to 25 minutes of suffering, but then the recovery is actually relatively quick afterwards, because like you're doing a 5k or a 10k race. One thing I take a lot from it is actually the ability to do tactical racing. So like in cross country, which maybe we don't do as much in ultra racing, where you make moves, like tactical moves to try to drop someone, but that's something that's really useful in ultra running.
Right.
That's what cross country is all about. Like making these little surges for 10 or 20 seconds to
and
try to break
someone.
Knowing that you can sustain and to drop someone. And that's something I did a lot of in racing, and I think it's really translated into my ultra running these past 2 years, which I've really enjoyed. I think, like, also this year we had a couple of our November project dudes jumped into cross country races as well, because they were training for ultras too, and they're getting PRs in ultra races now, and they really noticed how kind of beneficial it was. Like, I'm such an advocate for people jumping into the short races, but also for people to keep like jumping into road racing as well to train for ultras, jumping into like short trail races, kind of using I like using racing as training. Like after those cross-country races, we'd do the 5K cross-country race, and then we might go add on 2 hours in the hills afterwards as well. It's really nice as well because the races, like the whole race season here in Northern California, kind of goes all around the whole Greater Bay Area. So it's a great way to kind of explore new trails and new areas which you haven't run in before as well.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Let's get back to the marathon. You've been torn now between, what is 2019 going to look like?
Yeah.
Where's your head at?
So with Ireland, we have something like a 17-month window for people to qualify for the race. So from January 1st, 2019 through to London Marathon weekend 2020.
This is for the Olympic marathon.
For the Olympic marathon.
Yep.
So effectively, whoever runs, the 3 dudes and 3 women who run the fastest times will be heavily considered to be chosen for that team. There might be a little bit of bias in terms of the timing they run the race to get the 3 fastest fellas and 3 fastest girls to the start line in Tokyo. Feasibly looking at previous results, I think the 3 fastest men's times are going to have to be faster than 2:15. But the way I'm at now, so currently like I've ran at 2:20, but it was not off marathon training. Currently where I'm at now, I had a lot of goals already set for 2019 in terms of trail racing. The Wicklow Round in April, I'm entered for UTMB the end of the summer. But I'm going to put the first 4 months of 2020 into training for a road marathon, and then choose the last possible chance to get into the race. I'm going to try to do the London Marathon in 2020 and see if we use that as a qualifier. But already we've had like Stephen Scullion, I think is his name, an Irish dude, ran at 2:14:30 at Houston. So that like could be one of the spots already gone, and there's a lot of fast dudes in Ireland who are going to be getting pretty close to that. But yeah, I don't know. I don't feel I'm ready to commit to putting the next 18 months into road running, because I found running through the mountains and trails already had a huge amount of really exciting goals for that, and I wasn't ready to brush them to the side yet. But I still want to go for them in a unique opportunity where I can get relatively close to this Olympic trial, and I think it'd be really fun to go for it. And I think it's kind of funner just like putting in like making it slightly more difficult for myself to do it by only putting like 3 or 4 months into it. So yeah, I'm likely stepping back from my full-time job here at UCSF at the end of September. I'm going to try to full-time-ish running for a year and travel a bit. So I'm looking at some locations where I could go travel in the spring, leading up to London. Yeah, there'll be more on that in the next couple of weeks and months, I think.
Nice. I had a chat with Devin Yanko earlier in the week, and it was all about. I was trying to. It was like okay, here's where I'm at. What would you do? Mm-hmm. And what I was saying to her was that my road running was going really well, and I also love the trails. Mm-hmm. And her feedback was super simple, but it was like, do what you're enjoying right now. If you have an opportunity, in front of you that's exciting, ride it out, see what happens, and then make the change when necessary, which was good advice.
Yeah. Like one thing I found that, like for example, today, out in spending that whole morning out in the Berkeley Hills, it was just like it was pissing rain. Fog was coming in. I was going through like a foot of muck, but it was so much fun.
Yeah.
It was just like pure fun. And at times I don't really get that from just pounding the pavement.
Yeah.
I do love racing on the pavement, but just in terms of the training I just love getting out in the hills. And trail running and ultra running can bring you to such spectacular places. And I've been very fortunate where I've got the race in the Alps, got a race in the Dolomites, went to Hong Kong to do a race just this past spring. Got to run all over Ireland. I don't know, I think it just affords you some really it can bring you to some really spectacular places.
Definitely. One of the themes that guests on the podcast have brought up over and over again is enjoying the process. And I think the only way to sustain success or sustain any sort of consistency is to like like you were just beaming when you were talking about the rain, and you know, I experienced the same thing this morning running 15 on the Western States Trail, and just like splashing through the mud puddles, and it's just not as fun to splash through puddles on pavement. You don't get mud all over your legs, and like we took that shot yesterday of, you know, the mud up your calves, and like you don't get that on the road, but you know, it's fun to hammer sometimes. So let's talk about travel. Where some of the, you mentioned a lot of places. What's been the you know, coolest place you've been recently?
I just came back from I did the 100K in Hong Kong in middle of January. Hong Kong is a spectacular place in terms of, like, it's one of the biggest urban centers, or one of the most alive urban centers in the world. If you run 10 minutes in one direction, you're going to hit a trail with like 1,500, 2,000 feet climbs out of that.
A bunch of stairs.
It's got a bunch of concrete stairs. For some reason, they put it's kind of a lazier, in fairness, it's a lazier approach to trail maintenance over there. They make all the stairs concrete, so it's less repair. But something like 70% of the Hong Kong islands are green space.
Wow.
So it's an amazing, like, interface of, like, just the kind of the crossover between urban and trail is just spectacular there. So if anyone gets a chance, I'd recommend, and they have an amazing trail running community there. They've got races every weekend, so if anyone gets a chance, I'd really recommend getting over to Hong Kong to do one of the races there.
Nice. So one thing you mentioned was you're stepping back from your full-time job. I want to ask about getting into full-time running, but let's first talk about, what is your job? What do you do on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so I'm a cancer biologist at UCSF. It's the University of California, San Francisco. I moved over here in 2013 after finishing my PhD in cancer biology for a postdoc here. So I've been working across 2 different labs over the last 5 years as a postdoc, and now I'm a research specialist. The main focus of our work is that we're trying to figure out why certain tumors become resistant to drugs, because we've got really good targeted therapies out there that will target maybe a protein that's gone wrong to cause a certain tumor, and it'll work. The patient will respond, you'll see regression of a tumor, but then all of a sudden the tumor comes back and it no longer responds to drugs, responds to the drug you're using to target it, the treatment you're using. We're trying to figure out what happens to cause that resistance, what drives that mechanism of resistance. So we're mainly working on gastric cancer and breast cancer, but tumors that are caused by mutations in DNA damage repair proteins. One thing, the human cell is an amazing thing in that every day thousands of cells in your body undergo mutations that could potentially become cancer, but you have proteins in your cell that'll go around, they'll fix those mutations and make it back to normal. But say if those proteins are broken, that's what we're looking a lot at, and that's when it can develop towards a tumor.
Got it.
Yeah.
Do you think the science-based approach that you take in your professional career has been beneficial for the running that you're doing?
It has, and actually kind of one thing that's guided that, when I started running, I actually got involved I started working with a coach the first month I started trail running back in like January 2015. Matt Lay,
how did you find him?
It was kind of weird serendipity. I was on a run with Pete Cruz from one of our buddies here from November Project San Francisco, and he was like, "Paddy, there's a dude in my track club, West Valley, who's spectacular ultra runner. He just ran at 2:22 at Boston. He just won the US 100 mile trail championships, and as a coach, you should reach out to him to see if he'll coach you." And I was like, I don't want to do a coach. I don't want to take running that seriously. I'm a lacrosse player, Pete. Come on. Later that day, I actually got a message from Matt. Ends up one of his work colleagues had seen me at a race the previous week. I was like, yeah, there's this Irish dude who doesn't seem to know what he's doing, but he's doing really well. Maybe you should reach out to him. So on that same day, we both heard about each other. He reached out to me. He's like, do you actually know what you're doing? And I'm like, not really. He was like, would you like a coach? I'm like, yeah. And we've been working with each other since for the last 4 years. But he's an exercise physiology lecturer and researcher out of a university in Boise, Idaho, and he writes for, I think it's Trail Runner magazine. He writes kind of their science, some science sections for them. But he takes a very kind of method. I can never say that word.
Methodological.
Methodical.
These beers are hitting us.
Yeah.
Methodical.
Very methodical approach. Look, English is my first language, so come on, John should have got that. He takes a very methodical approach to training, where but also we like to balance in the fun side of it as well, which I think is really important too. And also one thing which we'll probably come back to is that we balance in like extensive rest as well. I like to balance in other sports with my running. I think it's really important to keep the mind fresh, and it's really important to keep kind of the emotional side of running fresh as well. I think burnout is a big thing, but Matt's very open for me to get out and do different things, like this navigation stuff I'm doing at the moment, doing climbing, taking long Christmas breaks, all of that. But the science approach of it, he's been really good in that regard. We get to play around a lot of fun stuff.
Cool. What does he think about the move to full-time running?
He's excited about it. He's really excited about it.
An experiment for him.
Yeah. Because he's been really good at like kind of direct, like taking on like my own personal goals and helping me fulfill them in terms of running background. But also because he's got a science background, he's also like, oh, what about all those papers you were meant to be publishing at UCSF? But he's excited for me to try something different, and also to really go for it with that road marathon time as well, because that'd be a pretty cool experience.
Definitely.
Even going for the Olympic.
Yeah, just setting that crazy goal.
Yeah.
Did you ever think you'd be doing anything like this?
No. I thought I'd be playing lacrosse for the rest of my days. I still could go back to it. I still got my sticks and pads up in the room.
And your fitness is a little bit better than it was back then too.
Yeah. Oh God, lateral movement though, dodging and sidestepping. I think my hips would fall apart.
That's true. Yeah. What do you do in terms of? I know you mentioned rest and recovery. What are some of your tips and tricks?
So this year I've actually started working at kind of, I guess as opposed to rehab, it'd be more prehab.
Yep.
I started doing strength training. I'm working with Ryan Wooderson, who is a former co-leader of November Project Denver, who has started doing. He's a PT based out of Denver, and he's starting to do. He set up kind of a training group in Denver, which I'm kind of working with him online. Lift heavy, run far. So this past 4 or 5 months, I've been doing weight training with him, and I'm actually seeing some good outputs. I was crushing the stairs in the Hong Kong race, felt strong in that, and I still want to be running in 20 or 30 years. We want to be running with healthy joints.
For sure.
And I think that's the one step towards doing that.
Cool.
And I also want to push kind of my short-term speed and strength, and I think strength training is going to help with that a lot.
So let's talk, let's get back to the full-time running. You have a handful of partners and sponsors that help you make things possible. Let's talk about some of those. Let's talk about how did you go about getting those partnerships?
So like my longest sponsor has been the North Face. So the North Face supported the November Project for many years, and I kind of got to know them through the November Project and through the Endurance Challenge series, because I was showing up with the tribe and with
bringing 200 people to a race is a nice way to get to know.
But was having a lot of fun, like hammering these marathon relays and then pushing up to like doing 50 milers and such with them. So we had a very good relationship at the Endurance Challenge series. They were very big advocates for kind of the community side of what I was doing, leading November Project San Francisco. So it was kind of similar to like myself and Matt, serendipitously finding each other at the same time.
Right.
With North Face, it was kind of similar, that we both kind of approached each other at a similar time, where it was kind of cool for them seeing like a November Project leader coming up and having success at the national level,
right,
here in the US. And they took me under their wing in late 2016, and I've been racing with them since the last 3 years. One thing I love about that team is their eagerness to support a team. So every year we have an athlete summit where we have all the climbers, the mountaineers, the skiers, the snowboarders, the runners, where they bring us all together for a week of activities. We're all sharing each other's sports or doing random sports. We were in Puerto Rico this year surfing. It was terrible. But they really promote kind of the community side of our sports, but also the team aspect and the team building aspect. My other sponsor, Sufferfest Brewing Company, they're the very same, where they love, like, they are huge supporters of all of the different sporting communities here in the Bay Area, and now in Southern California, up in Portland, in Colorado, and they're huge advocates of community and huge supporters of that. And that was, community is kind of what got me into running, kind of what got me into lacrosse as well. And it's been really fun as leading NP, as leading a November Project tribe, like giving back to that community. But then it's really fun to have sponsors who are also really behind building communities and like just making this fun for everyone involved.
Definitely, that's really the core of, you know, what it's all about. What would you tell Paddy of, let's say, 2013?
Paddy of 2013. Keep doing what you're doing. Jump at chances. When you've a weird opportunity in front of you, go for it. Like, it's funny, when I reminisced with my buddy Drew home and driving back from Wake Too Cool yesterday. He was here. Paddy, how did you end up coming to San Francisco? And so I told him a story of, like, I was a couple of months out from finishing up the PhD back in Dublin, and I was walking down the corridor and I looked up at the bulletin board and there was a poster with the Golden Gate Bridge, and it said, research positions available, University of California, email Martin McMahon, ucsf.edu. And I was like, that looks familiar. I saw that in The Rock. And so that was my only experience.
He's the next podcast guest.
Yeah. The Rock. I'll definitely help you interview him. Go into my boss. I'm like, hey, have you ever heard of this Martin McMahon dude over here in San Francisco? He's just by chance, he had emailed him yesterday to invite him to a conference. So then he responds back to my future boss Martin saying, I've got an Irish researcher who wants to come and join you. Ended up being over and back, and ended up moving to San Francisco then. So that was a very serendipitous thing that brought me to San Francisco. Finding out about November Project, for example, I was sitting right in this couch here in the interview for this house, and one of the guys in the house realised I was being into sport, and he's here, yeah, I've heard of this weird running cult that just started in San Francisco. You want to meet people, you want to move, you should join it. And I went and joined NP next week, or the week after that. That got me into running, and that got me out to travel to all these amazing places and meet all these amazing people. So serendipity is an amazing thing, but also you have to recognise what's a really good opportunity and to follow through with it as well. So I feel very grateful and lucky for the paths that have been presented before me, but I'm also glad I jumped at a lot of them too.
Definitely. What was November Project San Francisco like back in the day? And then next question, I'll say the next question.
Weird as fuck. Everyone was very weird. It was just fun.
And today they're not?
It's still fucking weird. It's class. That's one thing I love about it. That's one thing we always prided in San Francisco.
Yeah.
And it's been retained true to this day, in that just trying out weird events and zany events, and just kind of, just keeping it weird. Keeping people smiling, keeping people laughing. And sometimes we can all get caught up in our day-to-day, but you wake up in the morning and go and just have a really fun time doing a board game workout on over in Alta Plaza Park, or now in Dolores Park. You go into work an hour or two later just smiling and laughing about that.
Definitely. And what was it like turning the reins over to our friend Tony here?
Yeah, it was Tawana said allowed me to sleep in a couple of mornings a week, which is pretty nice. No, it was great. Tony's been one of my closest friends in San Francisco, and I couldn't have found a better person to step into my shoes and fill my shoes and be so much more efficient at being a November Project leader than me. Like, in terms of they've been able to do so much more. One of the things I love about coming to San Francisco is the it's not just a workout. It's a group of people that love each other, and they do cool stuff together. We were all in Auburn this weekend, just hanging out, cheering for people we did and didn't know, and it's just like, it's not just a workout group, and that's I think that's true more so in San Francisco due to the culture that you guys have created than anywhere else in the country. And I don't know, I've been to 15 different tribes, so yeah, we're really lucky just to have a great group of people that, throughout the week beyond the workouts. Monday nights you might see a group of NP people climbing together. Thursday mornings you'll see them going running trails together. Saturdays you see them going running trails, or going climbing, or going hiking, or going to brunch, or doing whatever, going watching rugby. All of this, it's over the years, we back back in like 2015, 2016, there was about 12 of us from NP. We had a touch rugby team. So we competed in the local co-ed touch rugby circuit. And we were mediocre to average. It was really good. We did quite well. Better than we expected. But that was really fun. One of our tribe members, Kylie Baker, she stitched up jerseys for us.
Wow.
And we tagged them, so we had November Project jerseys. So
that's awesome.
Tony, if you ever need November Project jerseys, we got you. They're crop tops.
That's good for those races.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the day you came to Boston. And I remember you saying to me after, I think you took down the stadium record. You said, you didn't take down the stadium record. No. But anyway, you said to me, what else can I take? What other PRs? What other course records are there out there? What Summit Ave? What do I race there? Do you remember the day that you raced the stadium?
This is third. I was going to a wedding up in Maine, landed in on Wednesday evening, and then Thursday morning, myself and Laura Green went out to Laura. It must be like 8-9 months pregnant at the time. Yeah. So she stood there heckling and recording, and I went for the record on one of the humidest.
Wait, Laura was heckling?
Who would have thought?
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah, that's wild. She's such a nice person to be at all times. So I went for the record on like one of the days of the highest humidity that I've ever seen, and that I'm going to claim that Boston has ever seen.
Yeah, confirmed.
And it was absolutely heinous. And
it was 95 and 100% humidity.
Yeah. So I ended up getting, I think, around like an 18:30, which I was pretty happy about, but it was like a minute short of the record.
For reference, like sub 30 is like the baseline that most people go for the stadium. 18 is just killer for those listening at home here.
So it's always, to be honest, it's always like, for San Francisco back in like 2013 onwards, we've always wanted to kind of get one over on Boston, because like they're the mothership, they're the original tribe, and we always wanted to do one better. So for the last 6 years, like going to Boston and taking their record is something I would love to do, but I haven't done it yet, and I missed it by a minute, so I'm going to have to come back and do it.
I think when you become a pro runner, you should just move to Boston and train in the stadium.
Yeah, big time. Yeah, great for training. That would have been excellent training for Hong Kong.
Mountain quads, mountain cabs.
Yeah.
What would you tell new runners or new ultra runners as they're looking to move up in distance? I think that's a population of people that, you know, there are a lot of those people listening to this podcast.
Learn about your stomach. Learn how to eat. Practice your fueling. Find out what's best for you.
And ignore everything else. Ultra
running is a race of consumption, often more so than a race of running, especially as you get to longer distances. The food and liquid you take on board is so important, and figuring out what you can take on board, how your stomach's going to handle it, is going to be important once you get into those multi-hour races. And so yeah, just practicing fueling, practicing eating. It'll make your experience out there much more enjoyable as well, if you're not stuck on the side of a trail puking and whatnot, or other things.
Unless you're Kyle Patari, in which case you just got to do it.
Yeah,
that's part of the game.
Part of the game. Yeah, I think learning about fueling, learning what your body can take on board. Like when you're out there for several hours, your credit card's always in the red in terms of your body, and you're just trying to keep it. You're just trying to not hit that limit.
Yep. Yeah. Nice. What gets you really excited?
Going to cool places to run, to explore with friends. Just seeing that my feet can take me out into ridiculous outdoor places.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Paddy, for doing this. I'm excited to share this conversation, and I think that's it.
Cheers, lads.
Awesome.
It was a really fun afternoon.
That's it for today's episode. Like many long runs, it's sad when it has to end. I hope you join in next week on For the Long Run, and in the meantime, happy trails. If you've enjoyed this episode, it would mean a lot to me if you shared it so that others can find it and enjoy it too.